recede, right? But basically, if you think, okay, well, like if you control the river, what are the two ways that you could speed it up? Well, one thing is just put more water in it. When it rains, the water actually speeds up. Or the second way is you get rid of any dams in a way so it can speed up as well. And obviously, if you want to slow it down, well, then you'd take some water out of the river, would dry up the river, or you would actually put some dams in the way. The way that a central bank speeds up or slows down the river is they do it with basically printing money, right? Like they'll print money and that's like put like raining into the river. It's going to make a bit, and then they can try and take money out of the economy as well. And when they're doing that, which is what all the governments are trying to do at the moment, but not doing it very, very well, then that's basically a way to speed and slow, a way to increase and decrease the volume of water flow. How do you actually change the speed of water flow? Well, that's called interest rates, right? So an interest rate is something which if you put more interest rates in place, then it slows things down because basically people aren't going to spend the money so easily and they'll store it. And if you actually get the interest rates out of the way, it's going to speed things up. So we've just gone through 10 years where the governments have been printing money like crazy. Everyone's felt rich. They've been basically like, bringing interest rates down to zero, or in some cases even negative. And then now suddenly they're like, everyone's getting drenched. And at the same time, we are seeing a situation where if we don't watch out for ourselves, we're going to have so many people who are going to end up with goods which are way, 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 way too expensive, right? And so they're like, the way we're going to change that from everyone just not having enough because basically everything becomes too expensive because there's too much money, is we'll basically try and slow it down by putting interest rates up. But what that does is it increases the cost of holding on to that money, right? Like, so this is exactly what's happening if you got a mortgage, for example. Or they basically are trying to dry up the money flow, but that also then ends up with a challenge because you end up with like effectively a situation we have right now where there's no way for the government to have any levers left, right? Like if you keep printing the money and you go, oh my gosh, it's actually not that the prices are going up because of supply issues, it's going up because the money price is going down, which is actually what's happening right now. You can't just keep on printing the money or keep on trying to get people to hold on to it because you get to a point of no return, especially if people lose trust in that money where it just disappears. Fundamentally, people losing trust in money has had a lot more to do with people losing trust in the government, which we're seeing all around the world, and people losing trust in the media, which is why we have people coming here as well. So what I would say is the most important thing is to realize that we are in a time which is the same in a season as winter. It's when everything is slowing down, and it's where your money, even if you just hold in one place, is like holding onto ice. In winter, if you hold on too tight, it melts anyway, right? And that's exactly what's happening right now with our assets, which is why what we have to do at the moment, as you're going to hear in the next session, is all about not cash and holding on to it, but cash flow, moving it through you, right? Like getting into assets which are cash flow generating, so that even if the capital value of them go down, like if your property goes down, but you're still getting good rent, that's okay, right? Like as long as you've got the cash flow. If you're investing in businesses and you're not looking to sell the business, who cares if the business is worth less than it was? You're still okay. So, for example, in our case, some people on the call know our company Genius Group. We had an IPO on the New York Stock Exchange in April. We've raised over $40 million this year, and we're in a position where even though all the share prices, including ours, has gone down, we're fine for the next couple of years, and we can go out there and do acquisitions because in times when it is things going well, when times going like in the last 10 years, you make money when times going well by selling, right? Like, if you're good, because people want to buy stuff. But when times going bad, you don't make money by selling. You make money by buying. So we're doing acquisitions, right? We're looking like it's a sale of the century right now. So if you have cash, you should be looking for where can I get really good deals? And how do I get deals that are actually generating me cash flow? And we're going to go through exactly what those are all the way through today and tomorrow so that everyone's got a much clearer idea of how you prepare for wintertime, very different from how you prepare during summertime. So if you have the word recession, if you have the word stagflation, just have the word winter. Like if you have that word instead, right, we all get it straight away.
Well, as a Canadian, I feel like I'm prepared for the coming storm. I have faced my winters in my youth, which actually is a good segue because Blake Knock was actually asking about, are there things that we should be sharing if like our kids and young people are asking about like what's going on in the world and we want to maybe teach them some of the concepts we have here. Do you have any word of advice on like how do you approach the subject of finance and teaching even kids about DeFi and stuff, given that so much of what you see around is just so much fear, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll share this in terms of the immediate, but also in terms of how we're trying to solve this longer term as well, right? And have we lost? Have we lost Jason? Is he gone?
No. I just there was no reason to having my face there because I'm not talking. I'm
I
just
see.
nodding,
Okay.
and so I'm still here.
Everyone's got my big face there. Okay, got it. Okay. So first of all, let me give the short answer, which is if you've got a kid who's currently interested in crypto or interested in the economy or where things are going, I bet you they already are more educated than you on this. And I'm saying this because I've got kids, right? And I know this because we have things today which we didn't have 15 years ago, like YouTube, where we have amazing people sharing great information out there, and kids aren't actually watching mainstream media, right? So most of us who are older, like we're used to watching mainstream media, and so we aren't getting all the information that kids are getting right now today. So the first thing is they actually are getting educated already in these different areas. The second thing, which you can be saying to them, and I really think you should say to them, is there's only once every 50 years, once every 100 years, where there is a seismic change in everything, where anything's possible. Because I think that a lot of the millennials and even Gen X have been growing up thinking, well, I can't change stuff. Now is the time you can change stuff more than ever, right? Like if you have to go back almost like 25 years, which is when the .com boom started, when internet became a thing, when young kids like Jeff Bezos, right, like started Amazon, right? You're seeing like they're now the wealthiest people in the world, right? The same with Elon Musk, right? Like he only started like 15 years ago, and so seeing the fact that the people today who are very aware that there's a shift in power coming, or actually on us, that in 25 years is those who take the action now who will be the most successful or having the biggest impact. It's not about the money as much as what you can do with it, right? So having the biggest impact in the world in 25 years from now. So it's level the playing field, right? So that's the good news if you're aware of it. 50 years ago, obviously, is when we're talking about, what happened with Nixon shock, what happened in terms of like the current world order we have. That's all coming to an end as well. 100 years ago, obviously, is like the Roaring Twenties. So like this is, on the one hand, a scary time, but it's also a super exciting time if you're ready to take the wave. So I think that's really important, is that if you've got kids or even yourself, you're feeling a bit pessimistic, switch that mindset, right? And say, you know what? No, like I might have just crashed off the wave, which is crashing, but hey, there's a bigger wave coming, and there's always another wave, right? Like, and this is one worth getting onto. Get your paddleboard and paddle it, right? That's one thing that I would say. Second thing is like, but how, where, what does it need to look like? The power structures in the next 15 to 20 years will not be nation states. They're either going to be cities, right? We're already seeing the cities in the world which are the most competitive, most powerful. Like the top 10 most competitive countries in the world actually all have less than 10 million people in them, right? Like if you actually look at the rankings, it's the Nordic countries, it's Singapore, it's Hong Kong. Like so these are basically, it's about economies of speed, not a scale, because it's about the new technologies. But also it's going to be communities that create their own currencies. This is why there's so many different crypto communities that actually are very much, they're not about the money, right? They're actually about the philosophy of taking back trust and not having trust in the hands of someone else that's debasing the currency that you're using, right? And of course, that means that it's coming to an end in terms of what's happening with the governments right now. The last time this happened, by the way, in terms of like historic moment when this happened was in the 1800s in something called the League of Nations. It's like, I think it was like 1848, 1849. It's when all the monarchies, everyone like knew the monarchies were the ones controlling everything. And suddenly, in like one summer, all of the European countries lost their monarchies, like other than England, right? All the other ones fell. France fell as the French Revolution. And then that then just created this whole roller coaster where like 5-10 years later, everyone's like, how did that even happen, right? But it happened so quickly and boom. And like 6 months earlier, it wasn't like the kings and queens were like, oh, we're in trouble here. They kind of half knew it, but they certainly weren't thinking they were going to be off their thrones and off their heads, right, within basically that 1 year. So just be very aware that we are in that space where you need to be nimble, and it is a very, very historic moment that we're living through right now.
That is amazing. And Roger, you can support me in this statement if you think it's accurate, but I'm seeing someone like Lumka talking about like, well, I'm just starting from scratch. This is not too late. And I would think if anything, if you're starting from scratch, you get to build the right foundation. So you're definitely at the right place. You're not too late. And what we're going to be sharing now is we're getting into a question of cash flow. It's going to be super amazing because you're just absorbing these new concepts without having any baggage at this point. So super exciting that you've decided to get started, Lumka, and that you're here learning with us. Now, Roger, you've had a fantastic conversation with Brian Young. We're going to be playing that now. Anything you want to share before we go ahead and show that amazing section on cash flow?
Yeah, one thing I'm very excited about is that we have a number of speakers here. Jaspreet is one. Brian Jung is another one. You can actually look at their YouTube channels. They've each got over 1 million subscribers. There are people on listening in right now that have come here via their invitation. And one thing I'm very excited by is most of us have had to get our education recently from YouTubers or from others that certainly are not our teachers from school or from university. What I'm very excited by is that Genius Group, because we own a university in California, we are bringing the likes of people like Brian, people like Jaspreet, like YouTubers into a degree program, a certification program. We're in early days of building all of this, but the reason that we invited these YouTubers into the summit is that we are at the beginning part of putting together what will be programs, which will mean that even at high school, I'll be able to learn from these YouTubers and get my high school diploma with financial literacy, right? I'll be able to actually get an MBA in crypto, right? I'll be able to get a business degree in Web3 or in blockchain. No one else is doing it in this way, even though there are, companies like university like Harvard, Stanford that are doing some of these kind of like fintech courses. They're still doing it with professors, right? They're not doing it with the people that actually are every day speaking to millions of people about this stuff, right? But when we go out there and bring the most relevant people in who are not the teaching teachers, they're the leading learners, right? Like every day they're not coming saying, here's what I learned, like here's what I can teach you from a book from 20 years ago. They're like, no, here's what I learned yesterday. All right. And so we all want to follow leading learners today because things are moving too fast that whatever you learned 10 years ago or even 2 years ago is out of date already, right? So just to let everyone know that be inspired by what you're hearing, but also know that in the future, we really want to bring this out, not just to those who can come for 2 days here, but really for any school leaver, anyone going to university, anyone, kind of quitting their job and deciding they're going to go full-time investing. And I think that's a really, really important part of the philosophy of what we're trying to do is to solve a bigger problem, which is that education itself is broken, which is why so many of us are in a situation with a broken economy.
I love it. Now, Rogers, we are about to play that session for your conversation. Now, I just want to take a quick second here and just share with everyone. If you've just tuned in and, let me just move this down here. And you want to get access to all the resource. I know the common questions that come up are, where is the replay? Where can I find the slides, the order of events? You find it all here. live.geniusu.com/summit 2022/live. And you'll see the slides is something you can follow along on the conversations coming up. And for those who aren't familiar, Brian Young, an amazing YouTuber with millions of followers here, who shares a ton of content when it comes to understanding about cryptos, understanding about investments. And what we're going to see is an amazing conversation between him as well as Roger, talking about cash flow, what are happening in the current times. Super excited to get this started. So with that, I'll ask the team to set up the queue, and everyone out in Singapore, make sure you have a seat as we're just about to get started. And with that, Tao, please queue up our next section.
Hi, so we have Brian Jung with me here on a very, very special interview. Hi, Brian, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Roger. How are you?
I'm very, very good. And I know you're not in the US right now. Do you want to share with everyone where you are?
Yeah, so actually I am in South Korea during this time. It's been a while since I last visited my home country, but it's been amazing so far.
It's very cool. You were saying you haven't been there since you were 3 years old. I'm in.
Yeah, it's been 3 years old. Yeah, so I really didn't know what to expect. A lot of my family outside just my parents still live in Korea, so it was a good time for me to see my roots, see my grandparents, and make sure I was able to talk to them. Through this time with the COVID lockdowns and everything, I was worried I would never be able to see them. So now that there's some more time happening within the market, I figured it's time to come visit them and see what's happening here.
That's very cool. That's awesome. And thanks for making the call as well. Yeah, we're living in pretty crazy times right now. There's really two big things that I'm keen to just dive into with you. Obviously, you're very known for the whole investment side, especially with crypto and so on. But just before we get on to how does anyone right now in today's market turn their money into more money? Like how do they actually turn their investments into money? How do they turn their time, or more importantly, their business into money as well? It's like Ray Dalio says cash is trash, but like cash flow is king. Is like how to create that cash flow to go. I'd be super interested if you could share with everyone just how you're thinking right now with the YouTube channel and how you're growing, how you're diversifying into cash flow generating businesses, like some of the other YouTubers are doing right now.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So let's start with this. Right now, we are in a really interesting state in terms of the economy, in terms of the recession, in terms of interest rates. And for me, the cool thing is I'm having personal experience just throughout different markets. So I'm seeing it within, just making these YouTube videos, but I'm also in the process of buying a home, which I started like 2 years ago. But even back then, the interest rates were so low to compare to where it is now. And you can only lock out something like a mortgage only so far out in advance. So, before then it was like at 2 point some%. And even before that, we were actually at a point where feds had cut our interest rates to zero during the peak of the pandemic. So that's when we had heard of that term, 0% interest rates. People didn't really understand it that much, but now that interest rates are actually going up, people are getting a more full grasp of what the other end of that spectrum actually was. So even as an example with the mortgage situation, we're seeing interest rates go up. That means we're seeing, credit card interest, we're seeing mortgages, we're seeing car loans, everything around that bubble where a lot of people were able to get more money, able to use that towards different type of assets. It's becoming more expensive. So now we're seeing the stunt in a lot of the different markets. Stocks has not been doing well. Crypto obviously has not been doing well. And it's not like even some of these classes have just continued to crash and crash and crash. We're at a point where we're seeing the crash. Now we're seeing stability within that crash. And then we're seeing kind of like a slower, dragged out burn. But even amidst this bear market, a lot of people are questioning, like what's the move? Like if everything's going down, if I can't buy watches, if I can't buy cars, houses, crypto, stocks, just any, broader index right now where people would generally be making money, what do you start doing? So this is something I've been thinking about a lot over the past few months, especially, with my own mortgage situation, seeing how interest rates are continuing to go up. Every time it goes up, at least for my home here, the one I'm trying to build in the Maryland area, every time we're seeing it go up about a full percent, I'm seeing a huge amount going onto my mortgage. So before, my monthly house payment would have been around $5,000 to $6,000. Because of the last 4 months of how drastic it's been, my house payment is now up to $12,000. So about every percentage, it actually adds up a huge amount. It's about $1,000 every single time onto my mortgage. So I'm seeing firsthand just how expensive money is becoming. And one of the big things that I realized that people need to start doing is to start investing in themselves and start to realize that there are many more opportunities to make money outside of investments. So a lot of people will look towards just using their own primary sources of income, whether it's a job, whether, they might have that side hustle as well. It is so important right now for you to have that skill where you're able to generate more income. I think that's where it starts. Generate more income, because no matter what investment you're looking towards, that saying where it's like the rich get richer, I've seen that firsthand myself, just because I'm an individual where I didn't grow up with much money. My parents didn't have much money either. And many of the times we were always struggling. And I always figured like how are some of my friends and their parents always so much better off? It seems like they already have a nice house. How is it that when they have one nice house, they're able to get 3 or 4 more outside of that? Or if they have one nice car, how do they have so many more? So it really does start with it starts with being involved in a community. It starts being involved with just learning that skill set. So personally, some of the things that I've done over the past few months, over the past few years, is really just hone in on what that one skill set could be. Whether for me, it's doing YouTube, creating videos, giving people value online. And it really does also start with understanding what the value of money is. When I first got into the whole side of business, entrepreneurship, I didn't really understand how I could make money because I didn't understand what money was. Money is really this exchange of value that you can get from one another. The more people that you're able to give value to, or the more I would say the amount of value you can give to one person, that is the direct correlation between what I see and getting paid. So, if you have a company, they're not paying you that much. You have to ask yourself, well, how much value am I giving to that company? Are you a C-level executive where without you, their whole operations would fall apart? Or are you someone less on that totem pole? Like you don't have a big position, they replace you easily with someone else, then your income may not, equate to what they may be paying you. So for me, trying to learn that high value skill income, that was a huge start right there. And one of the issues that a lot of people have nowadays is there's too many things to learn. Like you could read a ton of books, you could think of just like 100 things to do all the time. So try to get focused on what that could be. That is what has helped me a lot. But in terms of more actionable things, even throughout this recession and this bear market, I have some friends making more money than they ever have before from their businesses, even from some of their other investments. So I'll give you a good example right here. This is something I actually don't talk about on YouTube or social media as much, but I had actually been a co-owner in a restaurant. So this is the first Japanese barbecue spot in Maryland. And a lot of people during that time, a lot of close friends of mine too, they were like, Brian, I don't know about restaurants because, we just saw COVID happening. We saw restaurants shut down and the numbers on this place was not looking good because when the government stepped in, called these lockdowns, a lot of people were scared to move back into that industry. One of the principles I have is when the whole entire pack, the whole, herd of sheep are looking one sort of direction, I try to move towards against that. If everyone's scared of one thing, I try to move towards that and see, first think, why are they scared of it? Is it justified? Is past historical movements of why they have this fear gonna take place in the future? After doing a little bit more analysis on myself, I realized the likelihood of us having another shutdown, I don't think it's gonna be as high. Could always be wrong. But I always saw more reward than the amount of risk that was on the table for this, especially the valuation I was getting. So it turns out, I invested about $90,000 of my money into this restaurant in order to get a small percentage back. I didn't want to have too much equity in it where they would now need my decision making and, I have to be more involved with it. I wanted to keep it more as like a passive investment. I want to focus on my true primary sources of income, continuing to grow my businesses, learning those skill sets. And I didn't want to have my investments become additional liabilities for me. So I bought in and it actually turns out to be one of the best investments I've had. This is a cash flowing business. There's a lot of moving parts to a restaurant. Inflation has been killing us too with the cost of food and even just wage increases in my own area. This has been the best investment because right now, every single month, without me having to do anything, the check that I put in has now generating me a couple $1,000s a month. The most I saw was $5,000 a month. And I didn't do anything, Roger. Like this is one of those things where I just go in there, I eat for free now, I say hi to the waiters, and then every single month I'm able to cut myself a check from the profit of the owner's distribution. Now within my area, I think this was like another once in a lifetime opportunity, and for like anyone watching, always be on the lookout for these. There was a whole shopping center in the area that I live in, and I live in a pretty decent area. You don't really see shopping centers close. So as soon as this went up, the whole entire auction, it happened outside of the courthouse in Maryland. The actual reasons on why it went on for auction is unknown, but the restaurant group that I invested with, we saw this as a huge opportunity. We went in, we bought it, and they were head to head with another group. So it was starting at $30 million, they were going up 31, 32, 33. Our cutoff point was going to be $44 million for this to be a reasonable investment. Because right now, we would either have to raise $44 million, pull that out from our account, which is not smart in my opinion, because we don't know how long all this will last for. It's good to have some cash on the side, or it's to borrow money. But interest rates are so high, it doesn't really make sense to borrow money from the government right now. It is too high. So we came to a decision, $44 million. That's going to be the cutoff. It kept going up. People were going nuts. The cameras are out. There was another restaurant group. They had 4 or 5 of their guys. They're on the phone too. We had our guys there. We had our phone. The service was not working well. The AirPod was dying. So there was all this electric in the air. we were getting to 41, 42, 43, $44 million. At that point, we're like, okay, we have to cut it. And at that point, that's where, they slam the hammer. They're like, okay, auction, you guys won this. Now, a lot of people may hear these numbers. It's crazy. And I never got to a point where I think we'd be possibly buying a shopping center for this much. But taking a look into this real estate, we are right now buying prime piece of land in a developed area that happened to go on auction. There's a post office on there. There's all these businesses. There's a Verizon store, an eye doctor store. There's about 5 or 6 different vacant shopping centers. There's a half-built hot pot store in there, and just a lot of these other cash-flowing businesses. So that's really the key right here. One of the best investments I made was a cash-flowing business. This opportunity here, this auction that we're having, this is kind of like the step above the cash-flowing business because you own the land on it. If those businesses do well, no matter what, you're collecting rent payments for the rest of your life. If this shopping center, which is half built right now, then gets everything else to be built on top of it, that valuation will increase. So we bought it at $44 million. We just have to get a new appraisal from the bank once everything is built up. Hey, check this out. We're getting much more traffic here. We have 4 or 5 different luxury restaurants that we built that on top of this. They'll raise it $60 million, $70 million valuation. So that money I just invested, that money right there, it goes up. So this is probably one of the most low risk, but safer, higher returns that cash flows either way. So I could sell out if I could find a buyer, or I can just continue to earn that passive income on it. So in order to even have the opportunity to do this, though, the most important thing is you have to have primary sources of income. You have to learn that skill to generate that. You need to be around like-minded people. That's where it all started for me. Once you're able to have that nest egg, once you're able to have some cash on the side, and you have that community, because I wouldn't be able to get into these deals unless I knew the right people, unless I did a little bit more networking, I put myself out there, and then in the community of Maryland, I even did like a whole CNBC video feature. That thing had like 500,000 views talking about where I was, how I grew up, and that really opened me up to my own community. So that's why I get approached with deals like this. It really does start with these basic fundamentals. And what I like to do before I even knew that I could make money online, because I wanted to be a police officer before all this. I was like, I don't want to be sitting in a desk job, but I want to do something that I could help people with, whether it's, like tackling bad guys in the street. I played rugby for like 6-7 years. I wanted to do something where I could help other people, whether it was just like one-on-one, direct relationship in person, or with what I do right now with YouTube, where I can impact millions of people.
Right.
So just with everything, and Roger, just feel free to like interrupt me, because these things I'm so passionate talking about.
I can see you're very passionate. I want to break down a little bit your story, because I think it's super interesting. Obviously, some people have been following you. Others who may not know of you probably wouldn't realize you're in your mid-20s right now. You actually, as you say, as a student, that was less than 4 or 5 years ago, something like that.
Yep, 4 or 5 years ago.
All of this has happened during that time. Within Genius, we have got something called the impact meter, which actually is the fact that you've got to keep on breaking through these new levels. And when you're at that kind of like level 1 stage, which is kind of like when you're doing your first 10, 100 grand, which is where you're at, that's when and when you started, I want to come back to that, because you didn't start straight away with a YouTube channel, right? So how you start, how you get that cash coming in, how you start your first business. Many people today, as you say, it's right now about the fact that there is so much opportunity if you know where it's at. I mean, most people can see employers are having a tough time finding the right people. So if you could be of value to an employer, even if it's just getting a job, you're going to get paid more today than you would have got paid a few years ago, right? So for sure, that's already for someone who goes, yeah, am I actually getting paid my worth? But then what I find really interesting about your story is that the way you basically said, okay, I can generate millions on my YouTube channel, and you did that within a few years. And then from there, it's like, well, how do I actually scale beyond that? And that's where we kind of like talk about getting to like a level 4 business, which is like going from $1 million to 10 million, which is what you're doing right now. In that part there, it's very interesting, because the fact that you went into a restaurant, and just for everyone who didn't do the maths on that, when Brian says that he was doing like, he can get 5,000 a month, that's like 60 grand a year on a 90 grand investment, right? So you're talking about like, a good 60, 70% return on investment per year. And that's pretty wild. We've got a we've got a resort in Bali we just came from, which was packed because everyone's coming out of the pandemic. They all want to meet again. We have a Genius Central, which I'm going to later on today here in Singapore, where we have over 6,000 people. We could come through there as a cafe, as an event space, and so on. And what is so interesting is that if you're at that level where you see that everyone's still spending the money somewhere, that's just not where they were spending it before, then it's about moving to where that is. And one of the things that I talk about is that in good times, you make money by selling, but in bad times, you make money by buying, which is exactly what you're doing right now as well, right? And you're now at that next level up, which I think a lot of people aren't aware. If they've got a property and they're going, oh, now's not a good time to get into property because valuations are probably going to go down because interest rates are going up, there are all these opportunities in there. And what you're doing, which is a lot smarter, is going for commercial property, because once you get into commercial property, you can define the value of the property based on the rental yields, and you can change the rental yields. Whereas if you've got a residential property, you can't do that. Like, you're going to be stuck at whatever the value is that the market value is, regardless of how much your mortgage is. And that is such a big difference. And that's why you can actually then say, hey, can we buy for 44 million and already make it worth $50 million as well? And that's, again, that's like a level 6 business, right? So it's at a whole different level too. So everyone on this interview are going to be at different levels, right? Some people are at the $100 million level. Other people are just getting started. I want to take you back for a second to the very beginning when you started, and if you could just share for everyone the switch from when you were doing the Amazon dropshipping to when you said, you know what, I'm gonna go all in on YouTube video. Like what was that thinking that made you make that shift?
Okay, no, that's a really good question, and I'm so glad you asked that, because that right there was a huge pivotal moment in my life. It goes back to that topic where you start learning skills and you realize, okay, I just learned one skill. Why don't I learn like 5 or 10 more? And then from there, you just have your focus like shifting all over the place. And I see this happen a lot with newer entrepreneurs too, in this digital age. I don't know if it's because we have all this short form content and we have like TikTok where it's like so easy to find that new shiny object and then just get impressed by that. And then you never really just climb up the ladder of that one skill set. So when I first started everything, this was in the beginning stages of dropshipping. There was still so much potential in this, and it wasn't before, like right now on YouTube and on social media, almost everyone does dropshipping. It seems like a lot of people will try it out. They'll make their own success story video, post it online, and it really grabs the attention of a lot of different people trying to get into the business world right now. Back then, it was not as cool as it was that like dropshipping is right now. Back then, if you ever heard of dropshipping, people didn't even understand that term. It was still one of those things where you'd have to Google or like really explain to people so they could have even a slight understanding of how that all works. So when I first started everything, it was dropshipping that I got into. From dropshipping though, I had learned other skills firsthand on how to apply that to different things. So I have dropshipping right here as like the first business model I started. From there, you just wear so many different hats, whether it's like customer support, marketing, creating a website, learning how to sell, optimizing the website so you're actually able to get conversions. There are just so many different things that you have to think of. And that is one of the benefits of that business model. The first year that I started it, I generated 100K in revenue. It was the first time I ever did anything online, so that was huge for me. The profit margins were not that great in the beginning, especially with dropshipping, just because you don't own these products, you're shipping it out from manufacturer. But I found a method even back then where it was more popular to ship things direct from China. But even for me, I was always thinking like, this can't be it. There's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way where I can grow this business and continue to get reoccurring customers, because that's actually one of the highest ways that you can get conversions. It's by targeting people who've already seen you before or getting them to come back. But they'll only do that if they have a good experience with you. So when I first started my dropshipping website, the first thing I did was, instead of trying to find a manufacturer from China, I was actually trying to find manufacturers from the US, even though it costed me more. That's why my profit margins got ate up. I knew that people were getting a quality item and it wouldn't take them a whole month to get it. So at that point, when I learned that system right there, I realized I think this is gonna be easier to sell. I even hit up like some of my friends that I played rugby with and asked them to model like some of the items that I was selling, and it was working out great. Even back then, I was optimizing short form content like 5 years ago before TikTok ever became a thing. And when I started to do that, wearing the different hats, I was able to then apply those skill sets that I learned into different businesses. So from there, I had Amazon FBA. From there, I learned, okay, if I can shoot this short form commercial video for a Facebook ad that's getting millions of views, what if I just apply that over into maybe a YouTube video? YouTube videos are just a little bit longer. We didn't have short form content back then. So I was like, maybe what if I make like a 6 to 8 minute video just talking about something? Now that I know how to use a camera, now that I can do a basic editing. So, from there I had Amazon FBA, learning how to sell products, applied it to there. Learn how to do YouTube just from uploading videos, trying to convert people into being a subscriber through education that I was providing. And then even at one point, I created a marketing agency. So because I learned how to use Facebook ads and I got really dang good with that at one point, was because I'm spending money. Facebook actually gave me and dedicated me their own ad specialist, but even when their ad specialists were working with me, I was at a point where I was doing this like 4 or 5 times a day for the whole year, that I couldn't see any value that they would teach me like anything new of. So I started learning all these new things. I started applying them, but then I got to a point where I'm like, okay, now I'm doing 4 or 5 things at once. How do I figure out what to do? Where do I transition over into picking what I love? So I realized with drop shipping, in order for me to scale the business, it's going to take me a lot more time, a lot more resources. I'm going to need more employees. But there was one thing that I realized that I could scale with without having to continue up my expenses, and this was YouTube. So when I got to that point where I learned different things, where I had many different options of being able to pursue different businesses, I just asked myself the question, which one is more scalable and what do I enjoy doing the most? I realized YouTube, I found like a different type of passion for it, just because when you sell something you make online, and the most like dopamine I would get from that, other than the money, is if I got like a personal email or got a customer review and it's like, hey, this is great. But YouTube is catered around that. YouTube, you get hit with that all the time. And not only that, if you're doing YouTube, sometimes now people will recognize me in the streets and they'll tell me like how much, these videos have impacted them, or how much it's helped them, or how much money it's made them. And that is like a feeling that I don't think I'd be able to replicate from some of these other e-commerce business models that I had, other than like maybe if the business owner was like really, really just like, hey, Brian, I love this and I love that you helped me out. So for me to, go back to your question, I just focused on what I love doing and what was more scalable. At the end of the day, that was just it for me.
Definitely the right decision. It's super interesting how, as things go through different cycles, there's often industries which is a race to the bottom. Definitely Amazon is that, and that whoever has got the cheapest is going to be able to win. Whereas something like YouTube is the opposite. It's a race to the top, right? It's like who can magnify themselves the most. And I find, I'm just going to come back again because you went through that whole path. And again, just so everyone gets up to speed with Brian's story, like last year you were already, so the news report's going, generating 300,000 a month now on that, and so that then gives you all this cash flow to then invest into other things as well. Obviously you were investing like many people into crypto and so on last year, and now hearing you go into things like restaurants and so on is awesome. Like Mr. Beast, right? Like what he's done $100 million on Beast Burgers, right? So let's talk for a second just about the fact that you are one of those YouTubers that's over 1 million subscribers that is looking at the models that they changed, and definitely a year or two ago, what were the biggest ad revenues? Probably, the actual ad revenues themselves plus merchandise and that kind of stuff. Whereas now you're seeing the top YouTubers buying into companies, using their brand awareness and attraction to then drive, people into them. I know you're also invested in like the drinks company as well. What do you see for the future in the next couple of years? Do you see yourself still producing the same kind of content on YouTube? Are you going to shift potentially again into new content? And what do you see your main investments are going to be if this downturn keeps on going for the next couple of years?
No, that's a fantastic question. So this is actually something that I think about a lot within my own team, because now I have 4 employees full-time. We work with some contractors, and for me to even be able to continue feeding them, it's not even just me at this point. Like now that I have a team, I feel like I have a responsibility to make sure that I'm able to adjust accordingly. So that's why we're always thinking about this, thinking about what the next shift is happening within, the YouTube side of things. So first of all, the whole shift right now that we're getting with creators, my big like revelation wake up moment happened like 3-4 weeks ago, where YouTube had actually flown out 100 of their top creators. I just happened to get like thrown on that list for some reason, because crypto is not doing as well as it used to. And a lot of the creators there were more of like the viral content creators. They're the ones that are getting 10 to 100 million views per video. A lot of like that's these are some of the YouTubers where I grew up watching about 5-10 years ago, and they were at this event. So when I was talking to them, because some of them have been doing this for so long, I was able to actually get a better understanding of how they've been able to adjust to the trends, because every few years it changes. Like right now, the short form content is really one of the best ways to get that reach where this didn't exist before. Even before that, during the pandemic, what actually started just trending a lot was streaming. So whether it was games, we saw gamers getting these high valuations, or whether it was just like regular streamers actually going about it. And this is because the pandemic forced everyone inside and they wanted to have more of that one-on-one connection. And streaming was really what brought that to life for a lot of people. So I was talking to the top streamers, top YouTubers, top creators, and even one of Mr. Beast. So Mr. Beast is actually ran by Knight Media, and Reed Richards is the CEO of Knight Media. So I actually talked to Reed a lot through that trip too. And what I found most fascinating is, Reed is traveling almost all the time with Jimmy, and he's able to actually get like an even better understanding of the creator economy, because he owns and manages one of the top agencies that represents the biggest creator in the space. So this is like Ryan Trey and just a number of them. And what he was telling me is that he believes in the next few years, a lot of these traditional companies, whether it's like Hershey bars or, so Mr. Beast with Feastables is trying to compete against Hershey bar, or even Logan Prime and KSI, who went head-to-head in boxing. They had a ton of eyeballs on them. They're trying to compete against Gatorade with their Prime drink. We're seeing a lot of these creators now using the audience that they built and moving over into a sustainable business model, because we don't know how long people last for. My whole thing is, I think every creator will have a few moments in their creator lifespan where they get that eyeball, they get people watching, but it depends on what they decide to do with the next. Some people have their moment of fame, and then they don't do anything else with it. They don't decide to monetize it in any other way. They don't decide to pivot their content, which ultimately leads to a lot of these creators dying. It goes into these cycles because someone new will always come up, and a lot of people, their attention spans are only so long, where you may be relevant in their life for a brief period of time. So what's fascinating is, if creators are right now moving over into creating these businesses, and they're trying to compete with a lot of these companies that are already public and they've already been dominating the space, their forms of marketing is really interesting. They're just known through their brand because they have been around for a while. This is what we would compare to like traditional companies that have just dominated the space. Even if you think about Hershey or Gatorade, the way that they can get their advertisement and for people to take more of their products in is by doing maybe some collabs, whether it's like with Marvels, like Avengers, or if like a new movie's come out, or if there's like a new Salt Bay guy, I don't know, just whoever's trending next, they'll be able to do like a collab with them and be like, okay, this is our new product, and this is how they get their word out. The issue with a lot of these traditional companies is that they don't know that new forms of marketing is coming about. They don't realize that people really align with certain creators. Influencers are looked at in a different way than they were 5 to 10 years ago. So with that, I think a lot of these creators, especially the top ones, they're focusing on the creative aspect. They're focusing on the videos, the views, but a lot of them, what they're doing is they're hiring like a COO, a chief operations officer, who has that business mindset and who's able to then put the pieces together. Okay, you have 10 million followers, you have all these viewers. How about we build a brand? How about we start creating these items where we can kind of move away from your name, just in case, something ever happens, you disappear, the views start going down. This will still be able to sustain itself in the future. So Mr. Beast is a classic example. I met this girl who does Pilates. She's been doing it. Her name was Blogalate. She did Pilates for like 5-10 years. and she is now all over Target. She has like 30, 40 different items. She sells it online. She told me she has 40 plus employees, and you would never think that. You would just think, okay, she just makes Pilates videos on YouTube. She's probably doing okay. But then like on the back end, I was going through her Instagram, and then she was telling me too in person, like she's got all these items. I just never would have imagined it.
Right.
So for creators right now and the businesses, it is just creating other businesses and using that momentum.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of interesting because it's just a matter of time, I think, when we're going to see some of these like big celebrity empires, which have been driven by Hollywood or driven by the music industry, be overtaken by some of the social media influencers that just have a better mindset and are thinking about what the next media platform is that they're going to jump onto. Because some of those more kind of old-fashioned ones, they've been driven by a particular industry, and they may not have made the transition. Some are, but we can see that happening with alcohol brands. People like Dwayne Johnson with his brand. You got like Jay-Z and Beyonce with theirs, and this is where you get to the hundreds of billions. But to see that happen in social media, we're going to see that for sure in the next decade, I think, which is very exciting. So obviously not everyone knows how to build a brand the way that you're building a brand, the way that people like Mr. Beast are building a brand, and so on. But they're actually generating enough money from their business or from what they're doing to then say, okay, I want to be smarter about what I do with my money. They're probably seen their portfolio size drop over the last like 12 to 18 months. And for a lot of them, I want to kind of zoom into one particular area, which is the crypto area. For one of them, they're getting all this conflicting advice. Should I stay with my crypto? Should I be selling and buying later? Should I be shifting where I'm putting my money at the moment? So I'd love for you to share your insights, because this is one area that you chose to specialize. What are you doing right now, and how are you thinking about the crypto space over the next 5 years?
Definitely. So crypto has been really interesting, but a lot of people tend to look at, a lot of these broader markets where everyone was so bullish on it just 6 months ago or a year ago. And now that things have gone down, everyone's they flipped the meter so much. They're so bearish. I'm actually more on the opposite side of that. Right now, as we're seeing the shift and we're seeing people's mindset change on these investments, we're actually seeing more growth being built more than ever right now. We're seeing partnerships line up more than ever. Like McDonald's over in Swiss, they just announced that you can start paying with crypto there. We're seeing a lot of these other companies. If you walk into a Target or Best Buy, you can actually go ahead and see a ledger, a cold storage crypto wallet being sold in that store. There are a lot of these just collaborations happening with some of the top name brands where we're seeing crypto now getting introduced more on a direct level, which is, it didn't exist before. Like even like 6 months ago at the peak of the bull market, we were not ready for that. So I think when the time comes, which is when inflation is under control, interest rates are under control, because Bitcoin is actually pretty easy to follow. Bitcoin is still highly correlated to what the S&P 500 is doing. If the stock indexes go down, you see Bitcoin usually taking a tumble. Stock indexes right now are getting factored in with macroeconomics. So they're usually pricing in interest rate hikes a little bit earlier on. And from that, if we're not under control with the inflation, people tend not to invest. A lot of the bigger whales want to be more cash heavy. They want to have those reserves. So we're just seeing this natural tug and war happening over the past 6 months. But the big thing to note is within the crypto market, they're building so much. And what I've personally been doing is just continue investing, dollar cost averaging. If I see a certain price point with one asset, then I'll go and buy in. So one of the things I talk a lot about is, we have Bitcoin, we have Ethereum, and then we have a whole other altcoins. That's kind of just how I simplify it. There's definitely more categories. We have high cap, mid caps, and then we have low caps, and then we have micro caps too. But within a bear market, just keep it easy, because when Bitcoin goes down, everything else goes down too. Everything kind of just gets condensed into one group. In the bull run, if Bitcoin goes up, then slowly Ethereum may go up, but then we would have other high caps going up, Cardano, Solana, then we would have mid caps and then micro caps. So it would kind of follow this domino effect, and that's how you could also double, triple, then 10x your money within crypto very easily. You would follow that type of wavelength. So what they call that is the flow of money happening within the crypto cycle. To keep it easy, I look at Ethereum. A lot of people will look at Ethereum alternatives. You have, like I said, Cardano, Solana. People even look at XRP right now because XRP got stunted a lot in this past bull run. It didn't blow up like some of the other assets did because of the lawsuit that they had. But these are all a lot of viable projects. They're still building through this time. They have the funding to be able to last them the next 3 to 5 plus years, even longer than that if the bear market did extend past that zone. But the reason why I decided actually to sell, so I had a majority of Bitcoin when I first got into crypto, and this was back when I was still going to community college. I sold a lot of my Bitcoin out just because I was looking for something that could give me a higher return. Bitcoin, you have to realize it's more safer. This is where a lot of the institutions will still buy more in. They're not going to be buying like mid caps or micro caps. They're going to be buying into Bitcoin continuously. So it really just depends on the objective that someone has with their investment portfolio. There are a lot of whales that will never look at any other cryptocurrencies to buy in other than Bitcoin because their market cap is so big. But for me, my objective was I wanted higher returns. I didn't want slow turns with the same amount of risk. And arguably crypto is still within that volatile investment asset group. So what I've been doing
sorry to interrupt you, but just a quick question on that as well. You know how we started our whole conversation around cash flow assets, right? And obviously, when Bitcoin first started, when Ethereum first started, they weren't cash flow generating assets. But now that more and more cryptos, including obviously Ethereum now with the merge, have all moved towards proof of stake, and so you can actually now be earning cash flow right from staking. Are you looking at that as a viable way to be increasing cash flow right now?
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to even buying crypto, once you buy that crypto, a lot of people just stop right there thinking, okay, it's good enough for me as long as the crypto goes up in value. But the reason, so I sold a lot of my Bitcoin and I buy primarily Ethereum now. And the main reason is because of what you just mentioned. It's because I can actually use Ethereum to buy, whether it's DeFi products or NFTs, or I can use that to stake or to earn different types of interest on different exchanges. The whole point is that when you invest your money, if you went into the stock market, it ends with the stocks right there. But when you go into crypto, you actually buy Ethereum for the utility for it. So this means is crypto allows you to go a step further. You buy the asset. If Ethereum goes up in price, if you buy it at $1,200, it goes to $2,000. That difference is where normally you would just make money. People would be happy from it. But the reason why I tend to go deeper is because you can maximize the amount of money you make on a whole nother level. So if I buy Ethereum, these NFTs will 2x, 5x, 10x in a bull run faster than any altcoin that I've seen. Like overnight, I would see NFT projects blowing up like crazy. And believe it or not, even the top NFT project right now, which is the Bored Ape Yacht Club, their minimum floor price, which is the lowest value of their, basically their cheapest NFT, that floor price is not even under $100,000 amidst like the craziest like just times that we're living in. So that project started out minting at, I believe it was less than like $20, maybe even less than that if you got in really, really early before their general public mint. So you're talking about an asset that started out in the single dollar digits, but is still worth over 6 figures. Like during crazy times. So when I'm buying certain cryptos, when I'm buying Ethereum, it's not because I'm just looking at it to hold, throughout these times and maybe in 6 months, a year. I don't know how long this bear market's going to last for, but no matter how long it does, I'm buying it to accumulate it to use into other ventures. And I think that's where people can find the most amount of value.
Yeah. And you were talking about adoption, right? Like, obviously Google was also just started like embracing crypto more as well, and even like making it searchable for ETH addresses and so on. So this all changes when there's adoption taking place, but there's also the other side, which is regulation, right? Like where are things going to go in terms of regulation? And this I've been asking people recently. I'm going to ask you as well, whether America goes down the China route or the Switzerland route, right? Like the fact that Switzerland has, Zug as crypto valley because, and every university has got, blockchain and DeFi courses you can take, and they've just embraced it, but they've regulated it in a way that you don't have scams and things taking place. But then you've got the likes of China where they just ban it all together. Even South Korea, where you are right now, right? It was just like, a month or two ago, they said, hey, like we're going to actually ban access to, foreign exchanges and so on. So with America, I mean, at the moment, like, you know, like I think you just did a video about Yuga Labs and how America's now probing. You mentioned XRP just now as well. Like, if they're going to start going for the likes of Bored Ape or Kim Kardashian for, you know, promoting cryptos and so on, where does it end? Do you think America's going to go down more the Switzerland route or more the China route?
That's a really good question too. So, okay, we'll start with America. I like to keep it simple. I don't think they're gonna go towards at least what China's doing. China is like its own. They got their own issues. They got their whole thing going on with their government. I don't think the U.S. would ever get to that level. But we are seeing during these times where the SEC is now stepping in and they're deciding to hit people with huge fines, like Kim Kardashian, just as we mentioned. But there's a reason, because there's a lot of people other than Kim Kardashian who have done way worse within the crypto markets in scamming others. Keep in mind, Kim Kardashian right now is only getting charged with the Ethereum Max promotion. It was a scam token. It rug pulled, it pump and dumped on their followers. But all she did right now, that a lot of people are upset about, is she posted it on her Instagram story without making the clear disclaimer that she was getting paid for that. So the reason why I think Kim Kardashian got the headlines is exactly what the SEC had wanted. It wasn't more about just actually bringing justice to Kim Kardashian for the evil that she had done. It's actually because her name is so just popular within the current hip hop, culture right now, where anyone who's investing or anyone who's not even investing into crypto, they'll still hear that name and be like, whoa, what's going on? So the SEC right now, they're slapping wrists really hard because they do want to make an example of certain people and they want to give a message to the entire markets. I don't think they're doing this and they're going to be targeting every single person exactly, but I think moving forward to the next bull run, because of what they're doing with some of the top influencers, this is going to be like the warning message sent out. And I think we're still in this area where we're not going to be seeing that type of crazy regulation on the China side, but we may not be as far in, just pro crypto as some of the other countries have been too. I think America is right in the middle of all that. And this is only because America is still dictated a lot by politics, and politics have a lot of influence by lobbyists. Lobbyists are really controlled by, the rich, the wealthy, a lot of the, we have Coinbase, we have some of these top crypto exchanges who are able to come in and step in. FTX.us, one of the branches of FTX's main partner, and even Binance, they now have Binance.us. A lot of they're coming into the US, and they're not doing this just because, the US is solely going to be the market to grow in. They're doing this because they see a lot of potential in here, and they're also trying to step in early before any further regulations may happen, and they're able to create the laws that we know how to navigate when the next bull market comes around. So America, I do think we're going to be in the middle of that, but it's not going to be as crazy as China ever gets.
Okay, all right, very interesting. Yeah, okay, look, I got one more question for you, because this has been super interesting, and thanks so much for just sharing your thoughts on all of this. I'd love your thought on the future of the metaverse. I know you did a TEDx talk just this year, actually, and it was all about the metaverse. I did a video about 2 years ago, 2020, around about this time, and said, hey, metaverse is coming, and not many people watched it. Within a year, obviously, Meta changed its name, and suddenly it got 1 million views, and everyone was like Googling for what is the metaverse. Here we are a year later, and so many of the metaverse cryptocurrencies have crashed. But we've seen all of these kind of crashes before things take off again. You mentioned in your TED Talk education as one use case, right, of the metaverse, and also what happens when, you can get student credits instead of student debt, where you can be earning and learning at the same time, and all those kind of aspects, which obviously when someone's watching your video, they're doing it to learn, right? And so do you see the metaverse at this point, given what's going on in the economies, being something that accelerates based on where we thought it was going to be? Do you think it's going to take longer? And do you imagine yourself inhabiting it with the way that you're teaching people maybe 5-6 years from now?
So right now for me, I think metaverse and the progression that we've seen with it is exactly where it's supposed to be. We're neither too far out in advance. We're not stunted by innovation because the interest is not there. There's actually a lot getting built right now with the metaverse. I'm seeing the same amount getting built even during the bull market when everyone was interested. It's just that no one, mainstream media is not interested in metaverse anymore. Regular people aren't looking into it. And this is because when we're talking about wars, when we're talking about recession, and people are struggling in their own day-to-day lives, they're not looking towards the future of what's next. But in terms of metaverse, like even the most recent article that I saw was actually talking about how they've now come out with metaverse gloves. Like they just come out with this new product where basically you're going to be able to get like haptic feedback, and you're able to use these gloves within the metaverse, which was in existence in the bull market. They're building right now at an incredible pace still. And even Facebook, which is now rebranded as Meta, they're continuing to double down on this. Mark Zuckerberg has lost many different, so there's a billionaires list ranking. He lost many spots because of the metaverse. Because of the metaverse, people are saying too, like the recent earnings call that they had so much attention towards that they couldn't grow more users, and then from there their stock went down, and then he lost even more net worth placings on that list. But there's a particular reason why he's doing this. And for Mark Zuckerberg to get to the level he's at now, he's been thinking ahead for a while. That's how he was able to develop, the businesses that he has now. And he's not backing down on just the topic of metaverse. So in terms of the use case for it, education, everything, I think it's going to continue to grow, but it's just like what we saw with the whole Zoom spike that we had. So during the pandemic, Zoom went crazy with their stock prices. Everyone was downloading it, and we thought this was going to be the future. But when we took a look at it, we're like, this is still pretty basic stuff. It's just a basic Zoom, a video conference software. A lot of people argued if Zoom actually did innovate more and they were able to build on that hype, it'd be a different story. But their stock has corrected since that huge pump. And I see metaverse kind of in a similar way, but not in the way that it would crash and never return. Metaverse interest has just gone down. It's just gone down because a lot of people are now, they're traveling more than ever. They're trying to go back out before, work picks up again. And while people are continuing their jobs, they're not going to be focused on this topic. But I do see metaverse being used for education. This is something I spoke in that TED Talk about, and it's where, as a kid, I struggled a lot with learning different concepts with history. I really didn't like history, was not a big fan of it. It's like, what happened in the Stone Ages, what happened in the Great Depression area. We would see films on it. We would see, textbook images on it. But what if we're able to go into that place of time where we're able to talk to the NPCs, those AI characters, and really hear like the pain in their voice, or the struggles that they were going through, and that type of education and learning, it's going to change the world. Right now, colleges are still more expensive than ever. Even student loans is a huge topic just because of that whole student loan forgiveness program that the administration was trying to come out with. And the reason is because people don't expect the cost of school to go down. They actually expect it to rise up.
Right.
But the level of quality of education hasn't changed. We're still getting the same thing as we did 5-10 years ago. We're just getting the same diploma, the same degree. So I think metaverse is always here to either enhance the current things that we're doing right now, just make things better, simply said, or it's here to fix the problems that many people didn't think of ever being able to, fix. So I think just even with knowing those, metaverse is going to be here. Even though right now the interest is not high, it's one of those things where I definitely see in the future, in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to have a significant role in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you as well on that. So that's interesting to hear. That's it's going to be very, very interesting times, and just the fact that we are linking with Web3, the way that cryptocurrencies work, the way blockchain works. We just had a situation recently where we were looking to hire someone, and it turned out their LinkedIn profile with their degrees weren't accurate. And of course, if they were all on an NFT or if they were on blockchain, it would be so easy to verify those kind of things, right? So I think there's so much solutions that what new technology is bringing is going to allow us to actually shift our economy. So I would love you. I have no more questions, but one thing which is final words for everyone listening. Seeing what's going on with the Fed, seeing what just happened in the UK and in Europe, where now central banks are pivoting and going back to printing money again, seeing what's going on with predictions on the recession taking place, and you already saying, here's what you're doing, thinking forward as well. What would be your top tip that you'd be giving to everyone in how they should be thinking about their investments over the next 12 months?
Yeah, so people need to realize that right now, this is going to be the most important time in our lives where we can make money. A lot of people are going to see a recession and get scared, and you can come out on one end of this where the recession affects you like it did when I was growing up as a kid. It affected our family where we had to cut back a lot. We were struggling, and I still carry a lot of that trauma as a kid of how bad a recession was before, even into what I think of a recession now. But I look forward and I realize that we have the tools more than ever before. If you're able to hear an interview like this, you have this community, you have these resources where you have the possibility of being able to change your life and then use the recession to your advantage on a significant level. So for me, I'm going to continue doubling down on building businesses. I'm diversifying the amount of businesses I have. And on top of that, I'm looking for those cash flowing businesses. I'm continuing to dollar cost average into crypto. I'm buying it up. And while people are all scared, thinking there's going to be an even more dip and there's going to be another crash, you got to realize, look against the pack, continue to just follow basic investing principles. Just dollar cost average solely, or look for cash flowing businesses, or just build a lot of those skill sets that you have. And I think if you do that, you can come out on the other side of this recession really, really well.
Brian, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your time in Korea.
Thank you, Roger. Have a great day.
And there you have it, everyone. What an incredible session. To me, I had a few takeaways, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. First off, I agree with all the comments that were coming in. Brian, what a wealth of knowledge and such a young age, right? And it's so amazing that he actually has his YouTube channel where you can go deeper, you can learn from him. And also, I got to give my kudos to Roger's powerful questions throughout to really make sure that we had the key takeaways. And I know at the beginning there were a couple points that were a little fast, so don't worry, you'll all have access to the replay when you go to the page with all your resources. So what were your takeaways? What were some of the key things you took from this conversation? To me, when it comes to getting amazing opportunities, one of the things I picked up on is understanding the power of your community, right? The people you're connected with can bring some of the most interesting deals your way. I also took away the fact that attention and trust seems to be key pillars of the economy. And so the fact that he has a lot of attention and has built a lot of trust by having his YouTube channel means that he has flows of deals coming his way. So I'm paying attention to that. Understanding that we're in this market where buying is going to be strategic. And I know Roger already talked a lot about that. And so, yes, okay, now it's the time to start looking at some stuff. And the big thing around cash flow, knowing that you can slice deals up, you can generate the cash flow is going to be super, super important. And of course, we had a bit of an introduction to some cryptocurrency ideas as well as some investment. And I want to answer one of the questions that I know are right in the chat right here, which is from Sarah Moutonnier, who was talking about like, hey, I'm interested in buying stocks and shares. Are there speakers that are going to be talking about this? Well, hold on. We have our next speaker who's going to be talking exactly about this, looking at stocks, looking at cryptos, and really giving you strategies. Who would like to have concrete strategies? You heard Brian talk about dollar cost averaging. This is one of the basic strategies, but I just want to see, we got Gwen already going, me. Let me ask the question first, Gwen. Who wants to have some great strategies moving forward from someone who's been doing this for over 20 years, has written 3 wealth-making books in the topic of stocks, cryptocurrencies, is a guest lecturer at the Cass Business School in the UK, has been able to help teach families and his daughters even to get started. So I know we had questions earlier about how do you get started and how do you actually involve your children when it comes to investing? Well, listen, you get them to do the actions that are so beautiful. And I love how Marcus de Maria, who's going to be our speaker coming up, really puts this together in a beautiful way so you know what strategies are going to be the most effective for you. And before I bring him in, I'm just looking at the chat. You guys went so crazy with the me. Be patient and learn thing. I just want to call out Leslie talking about what she learned in the last session. Always determine value from Christopher, and leverage each other for elevation with good earnings that are going up, giving back, paying it back. So all this I really appreciate. So without further ado, we have our final speaker for today, Marcus de Maria. I'm so excited for him to be here, share